Thank you. Oh, there's the red dot. Okay. All right. I want to say good evening to everyone, and thank you so much to all the staff members who are here tonight, adding to their already busy days. So thank you. I'd like to call the Thursday, October 22nd, Wilton Board of Education regular meeting to order. First item is to review and approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So approved.
Thank you, Gretchen. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Mandy. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Hi, Glenn. Thanks.
That's the safe one.
Lucille, were there any comments from the public?
Yes, there are. The first comment is from Lara Passacheladis.
Okay, just before you begin, Lucille, I don't mean to cut you off, but just want to remind everyone that each speaker or each letter is limited to 2 minutes and 15 minutes total for a particular topic. And what we don't do at the beginning of the meeting, we can do also at the end of the meeting. So go ahead, Lucille, and I think out of respect for the faculty that we have, let's limit this session to 10 minutes, and then we can put the rest towards the end of the meeting. So thank you.
Debbie, do you want me to time 2 minutes per letter?
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Because,
Yep.
yeah, I have a beep that goes off and then I don't know how to shut it off. And then it's 3 minutes.
No worries.
Thanks.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, we're ready. Just a little bit louder than you are.
Okay, to the BOE members and the Wilton community, I would first like to start off by thanking the tireless efforts of our BOE administrators, teachers, and all the personnel that keeps our schools running and clean. I know this year has been an incredibly difficult challenge, but know that you are greatly appreciated for all that you are doing. As a parent and a concerned resident of our community, we are writing with a focus on the many logical factors we feel should be consider when making this decision. We all know that no plan is right for everyone, parent, student, teacher, and administrator. So I think we really need to look at what is best logically overall. 1, Connecticut state guidelines currently maintain that if a county has over 10 new cases of COVID per 100,000 population per day, over a 14-day period, a hybrid model is favored. As of October 10th, Fairfield County was averaging 6.4 over a 14-day period. Fairfield County over the last week is now averaging 9.8. 2 Connecticut counties have already surpassed that threshold. So is there a chance we go back for only a few weeks and then we could just have to move back to hybrid model again? If so, is it worth the effort and cost? In the last BOE meeting, Dr. Smith mentioned that he was communicating with the medical and town health advisor and determined that studies have shown schools are not the source for spreading the virus. I am very curious, though, if anyone has spoken to the Norwalk Health Department, where 22 students have tested positive over 6 days across 6 different schools, and 246 people have been asked to quarantine. Is there any evidence to support that this recent outbreak in our neighboring town has not spread to the family members and others? Norwalk numbers are on the rise, and I am curious how this might be affecting the schools and community.
Debbie, that's 2 minutes.
Okay, Debbie is on mute. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And the letter is on file, and we have also read all the electronic letters that come in. So thank you. Lucille, the next one.
Okay, the next letter is from Beth Flavin, 54 Calvary Hill Road. I appreciate the enormity of the task of educating all of our town students this year. I understand the desire to some to want to return to school for the 4 days. However, I do not view the 4 days as an acceptable risk to our children and families. I do not view being told come for 4 days with everyone or stay home as an acceptable alternative. The questions you should ask also are, how is the hybrid working, and who would like to keep the hybrid model? For our family, the hybrid model is working and is the best of the 3 scenarios. I don't want my child forced to stay home for 5 days when she can be in school 2 days more safely with half the students. The school made clear the standards and safety protocols are severely compromised with the full population. As it is, the halls are too crowded with just half the students. It does not make sense to expose twice as many students at a time as we are going into the colder weather, holiday season, flu season, and COVID-19 numbers that are slowly ticking up. Other schools are going to hybrid from in-person. Bridgeport. Colleges are sending their students home to work remotely after Thanksgiving. The Westport superintendent has recommended that they stay hybrid for the time being. And the feedback from Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill is that full return to 4 days is stressful and challenging. There are too many students and not enough distancing. I don't want my child to attend 4 days with full capacity, and I do not want to be forced to choose full remote. I choose a continuation of the hybrid, which is working well for my family, working well for so many Wilton families. I could not complete the survey as it does not reflect a choice acceptable for our family. I do not want to be counted as not responding, as I am responding that I would like to continue the hybrid model, which is a balanced alternative to full in-person and full remote. Thank you.
Lucille, that's 2 minutes.
Okay.
Sounds like it was ending anyhow.
Yep, that was it. And the other letter we received on the 15th, I emailed today to see if they wanted me to read it, and I did not receive a response back. And that was for 2 letters. One of them, they asked me not to read it.
Okay. All right. Why don't we save anything else for the second session of public comment? Is that all right?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Lucille. The consent agenda consisting of minutes of the last 3 meetings. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mandy. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Gretchen. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that's approved. On to reports. We have a long agenda tonight, so I want to keep my report like non-existent, but I do want to just do my usual and necessary thank you to the teachers and the leadership and the support staff for keeping our students and our staff going and safe and learning in spite of all the challenges and the obstacles put in their way. Many of our board members had the opportunity this past week to visit many classrooms in different buildings, and everyone walked away with, again, being awestruck with our faculty. So I think it's a result of careful planning and wonderful execution by our staff. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, just a personal note, this agenda, while long, at least contains some topics that are not COVID related. So I just want to add a personal happy note that I'm glad to get a glimpse of the future. Superintendent's report.
Great, thanks. Just a couple of things. First, I want to thank you, Debbie, and thank our board members who did take the opportunity to come and visit some classrooms and spend time with our staff. And as you noted, you had the opportunity to see in real time both the challenges and the successes. And, that's been my observation too, that as hard as it is, the model is working. So thank you. And please come back and keep visiting. I think on behalf of all of our staff members, everyone's happy to see you in the buildings and happy to share with you all their own personal experiences as we're working through this pandemic. I'm also just going to pick up on your non-COVID theme and just share 2 pieces of good news. Some of you may have already caught this first piece, but we learned a week or so ago that our high school school counselor extraordinaire, Dan Pompa, received the Americanism Award from the Connecticut American Legion. This is the highest award that's given from the American Legion to civilians. Dan was recognized by Wilton's Post 86 and was recognized for his work serving veterans and young people. He was honored for his service, dedication, patriotism, and unwavering support of teaching American ideals and in coordinating programs like Peervention, Kids on the Block, and the always successful and underway now Socks for Soldiers. So we just want to take our hats off to Dan and congratulate him on just a wonderful recognition.
Congratulations. That's really great news. Thank you.
Great. And then landing in my inbox today was a notification from greatschools.org that Wilton High School was recognized for the second consecutive year with a 2020 College Success Award. And that award recognizes public high schools that are doing an outstanding job of preparing graduating seniors for post-secondary success. So congratulations, Wilton High School, for doing a great job.
Another piece of great and not surprising news. Wonderful. Thank you.
Ending my report.
Sorry.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. Committee reports. Did the Teaching and Learning Committee meet?
We did, and I think that we're going to review most of what we discussed tonight. I don't have the notes in front of me, but if you want to just hold off, everything we reviewed, we're going to discuss tonight.
All right, that's perfect. Was there a policy meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a policy meeting. We discussed mostly a lot of policies that we had put on hold before COVID. So FMLA, the green cleaning, graduation requirements for the high school that we already have implemented, but we have not set a policy to. Boosters and requirements. So, Kevin, am I missing anything?
One was just the homework policy. So the policy that subcommittee had met over the course of the, I guess, first part of last year, maybe beginning of the year before that. So these policies, we reviewed them today, and they'll be coming forward to the board for review beginning the next board meeting.
Okay. And business operations, our last committee. Glenn?
Right. We met today for the first time in a while and welcomed Sandy Arkle, who is the new one of the two representatives from the Board of Finance to our committee. Sandy having just been appointed to the Board of Finance to take Peter Balderson's place. And so we welcome her to our committee. Three primary areas of discussion today. First was COVID expenses, where we are in the process. And I don't know if Ann's going to give more of an update tonight or not if we get into the financials. But they are, we're spending a lot of money, sadly. But it is all incredibly well documented. The details that Ann presented today were extensive by vendor, every single vendor that we've incurred expenses with. The budget freeze and the changes that we made in the budget have served us well to offset a significant portion, about probably 400,000 of those expenses. I think, Ann, that's correct. We are waiting for reimbursements from both FEMA and from the state, and that process changes by the hour. It seems like, what they want from us in terms of documentation, what they're approving, not approving, et cetera. So that still is a ball that's up in the air. We'll probably be in a position to go back to the Board of Finance in January, which is just around the corner. It's not that far away, with a more fixed number in terms of what we think the reality is going to be for the course of the year. We've incurred significant expenses as the year has begun, but Ann and her group are doing a phenomenal job in keeping track of those, documenting, and I can assure you that we will get every penny of reimbursement that's coming, we can, to offset some of these expenses. Secondly, Kevin gave a brief update on enrollment, which is not surprisingly down from what our expectations were for the year. As a number of families have chosen to homeschool or go to private schools for the shorter course of the year.
Glenn, I don't mean to interrupt, but that item is later on the agenda, so you don't have to do too much detail about that. Right. Thank you.
We'll wait for that. And then finally, although it seems as though the school year has just begun, we're only in the second month, we are now in the process of beginning budget prep for next year. And we discussed what that's going to look like and how to go about it in a year of great uncertainty. So we're just beginning that process, putting a calendar together for the budget work to be done jointly with Board of Finance, et cetera. We have a tri-board meeting coming up on the 2nd of November to talk about these issues, among others. But budget prep is underway for next year already. Knowing what the future holds is going to be a difficult process for us this year. So that's really it.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that report. We'll begin listening to the high school staff. I'm sure we'll get an introduction there. I just want to remind the board that there are 5 new courses. They have been presented to the Teaching and Learning Committee. They are not going to get voted on tonight. We have a week. If we have more questions to send them via email, and then we can have our final discussion and a vote on it next week. So again, in the interest of time, and I'm the worst offender, if we could limit our questions as board members to maybe our most essential tonight, and then we can do some follow-up and finish the discussion next week. All right, so having said all that, these are great sounding courses. So I'm not sure, Kevin or Bob, how you want to deal with this.
Over to Bob.
Okay, and just if I could just request, I can't see everybody on my screen at the same time necessarily, but it seems like there's somebody that's not muted. So if you're not muted, if you could just remember to mute yourself, just helps with the background feedback. All right, thank you. Sorry, Kevin or Bob?
Yeah, so I'll start, Debbie. As we begin, thank you to the Board of Education for reviewing our courses. This is more good news tonight we want to share with you, wonderful news to the community. We'll be presenting 5 courses this evening for your consideration and your review and ultimately your approval. As Debbie said, the Teaching and Learning Committee reviewed them, so we want to thank Mrs. Schmauk and Mrs. Laylor for your thoughtful review. By way of introduction, we have Scott Webster here and Amy Broderick, who will present American Sign Language 2. David Willock will present the Honors U.S. History course. We have none other than Michelle Coda and Heather DeLude, English teachers, to present Voices for Change, America in the 21st Century. And then Malcolm Carlin, our co-FAPA IL, will present 2 new courses, Percussion Ensemble and Intro to Music Technology. By way of a very brief summary, these are going to be really outstanding, innovative courses for our students. We'll continue American Sign Language, a course that is already popular with our school. We'll have an honors opportunity for our U.S. history students, a very fresh new English elective that's reflective of contemporary social justice issues and diverse literature, one music course that replaces one that was undersubscribed, and one that provides a new entry point for all of our music students. And then finally, a music course that ensures that our percussionists are being deeply engaged and maximizing their skills and their contributions to our music program. And as a true win-win, finally, we're going to introduce these courses with no increase in FTE and really with nominal startup costs. So it's a wonderful win-win for our school, and it's an exciting night. So at this point, I'll turn it over to none other than Scott Webster and our great new American Sign Language teacher, Amy Broderick, for American Sign Language 2. Scott and Amy.
All right, thank you so much, Bob, and thank you to everybody else for entertaining our new course proposals this evening. As you recall, we were here last year discussing the introduction of American Sign Language as our 6th language addition to our curriculum. Because of your support, we are currently running 3 full sections of level 1. And tonight we're proposing, as Bob mentioned, adding level 2 so that our students may continue on their path. And here with me to elaborate a bit more on this course is our, as Bob said, amazing teacher, Amy Broderick.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to Scott and Bob, and thank you to the board, and thank you to Wilton for offering this amazing course. It's really wonderful that everyone has been so supportive of it, and it's such a great opportunity for all of the students at Wilton High School. So things have been going great despite the challenges with American Sign Language 1, And we have a fantastic group of students that are really doing some great things in the classroom and even some projects throughout the school as well. And we would love to be able to continue that, the program for next year and add even more in-depth language experiences and continue on to offer the next level of American Sign Language.
Okay, do you want to stop, Bob, after each course for questions then?
Yeah, I thought we would, Debbie. If there's any
Okay.
questions on ASL, we'll entertain those, and then I'll transition to David for the Honored U.S. History course. So any questions for either Amy or Scott?
So there are you've got 3 courses, right? Or 3 classes that are taking the ASL 1?
Yes.
Okay. And then you interviewed 650 people or whatever. And so it was like 57% that wanted to take more. Was that after you started the ASL 1? I apologize for not being completely updated on that.
Yeah, we surveyed students last spring before we introduced, actually, I think it was 2 years ago, right, Bob?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we did get a lot of interest, and all the classes have through seniors enrolled. So it's quite a mix of students. There's students who are taking a second language as well as others who are trying something new.
Okay. I think it's a great class to take. So I'm pretty excited that it's moved on to the second one. And
yeah, I think it's wonderful. Any other comments from board members or questions? Can you do us a favor, Amy? Oh, I'm sorry, Glenn, go ahead.
No, with all the news today on TV, as you see governors speaking, et cetera, you always see someone in the background signing. Okay. Is that what, as we watch those people, is that what we're teaching? Because there seems to be a wide variance in what they're doing and how they're doing it. Is there really a standard that's used? I don't know that much about it, so I'm asking. But as I watch the news and I watch the people in the background doing the signing, doing all the facial expressions, et cetera, it seems to vary quite a bit. So
well, yes, the students are getting access to American Sign Language, which is what is being used. But depending on what the event is, there can be some variation in the type of language used, a little more formal, or what you're seeing. And what you're seeing on TV is a sign language interpreter. So they are interpreting what is being said by the speaker. So I even had students in class today comment on, I think it was one of the conventions, and they had the Biden-Harris convention or something on TV, and they had an interpreter there. And they also interpreted Hamilton when they were singing, and the students thought that was amazing, and they love to see it. So yes, there is a lot of exposure across the country to American Sign Language. And so it's great that these students are getting exposed to it as well, and maybe we are creating some future interpreters.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more of it every day. I think with all the news is coming forward, it's an amazing thing to watch. So more power to them. I think it's great.
Right. And Amy, could you do us a favor? Can you teach us thank you on screen?
Of course. This is the sign for thank you. I don't know if you can see that far. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Fingertips from your chin on down.
Okay. Thank you.
David, honor of United States history, please.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the time to listen to me tonight. I'm happy to propose a new course next year in honors U.S. history. And I'll just tell you a couple of things that guided our thinking really quickly. We really wanted to provide additional opportunities for students who express a real passion for history. And there was a lot of interest from students and families in our community in having our department offer these classes. And I think that this year's new edition of Honors Civics in the Contemporary World bears that out. We're running 4 full sections of that course. In addition, we wanted to stay in line with other academic departments, such as math, science, and English at the high school that are offering these types of classes, as well as schools in our DERG like Richfield, New Canaan, in Darien. We do operate on an open override basis, so any student who's really interested and has that passion is going to be able to enroll in this course. And we're really excited about it, and we're hoping for your support.
Any questions about Honors U.S. History from the board members?
Yeah, where does the curriculum come from, David, for the honors course? Is it something that exists, or are we creating it internally, or the guidelines for it, I guess?
Right. So if the board approves, we would take time in the summer to build the course, but we would look at different standards from the Connecticut State Framework for Social Studies as a guide.
Okay. Okay.
Further questions?
I thought it was interesting, the sort of open source online textbook. Can you explain a little bit why you chose that?
Well, we don't have to pay a lot of money for textbooks, number one. But number two, it's a really high quality source that's constantly being updated. I mean, if you buy a hardcover textbook, it could be out of date in a couple of years, given what's going on in the world. So this is constantly updated. It's also written by experts in whatever field the chapter you're looking at happens to be from. So these are written by scholars, and there is a hard copy of the book that you could buy offered by Stanford University Press. So it's a really high quality source that I'm a big fan of.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Voices for Change.
Hi, thank you so much for listening to our proposal. So Heather and I have been working on this outline for this course, Voices for Change, America in the 21st Century, for about 2 years. And we really think it will offer an opportunity for students to engage in very immediate events, social movements, social justice events that are happening, every day or every week. And we have part of the course is to offer students the opportunity to pursue one of their issues that they have an affinity for, so that they can engage in letter writing or in some sort of social activism. And then we have, this could be a year-long course, but so we look at things that some of the units are about being Black in America, the effects of economic disenfranchisement, the struggle for acceptance, and also looking at what experiences COVID has created for different populations in our country. And we see it as a course that's fairly fluid. We will have core texts, but they, depending on what's happening in the world and our country, that we can engage students in that discussion. And many other schools around the DIRG offer similar courses, as well as many universities. And it's really an opportunity for students to engage in what's happening now in their lives.
Also, Michelle, if I could just add that the very powerful letter that was written, that was really a testament to how engaged and how thoughtful our students are, even after they graduate, being concerned about some of whether it was literature, historical, some of the events or some of the voices they felt were left out of their education. And once they went off to college and went off to more diverse places, et cetera, that they didn't feel completely and utterly prepared. And I think that it's very important that we listen to that. In fact, Michelle and I, we had this course ready to go. And when that letter came out, we use specific novels that they ask for. It's also modern, which the students tell us again and again that they want to read literature that has been written in the last decade or two, and it is highly relevant to their lives. And I think this offers an opportunity to do so many things, to learn really how to be an important change maker as a democratic citizen. And I think it aligns very well with what we're trying to do and what we look at for the Wilton High School graduate. So I just wanted to add that as well. I also worked with Michael Gordon and his important work. in some of the studies that we formed as far as what was happening in our schools and our community last year. And I think this course also speaks to some of that. So I feel that it serves many, many different purposes for many things that are happening in our department, in our school, in our community, and in the world.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions, comments?
Yeah, I guess, I think it's great. And I think we need to do things that are current, that our students are hearing about every day, in whatever manner they hear about them. If I have a concern, it is that we keep it incredibly broad-based, that we offer all the perspectives. Okay, I mean, that really is a concern, that we're not the guiding force in terms of what perspective is presented, that we give it a broad enough base that we cover all the different views, and then the students themselves can decide which way they want to go, or how they see it, or how they think about it. But we must be very careful that we are not presupposing and preempting, different viewpoints. That we've got to be broad-based here, and not shut anything out. Okay, in terms of what we're offering them, or what we're topics of discussion, reading materials, etc. That has got to be the full spectrum of what's going on in the world today, because it is broad, and it's very easy to fall into the trap of focusing on one particular viewpoint or one particular area of interest, etc. And that's my only comment about it. We just have to be diligent about doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. I mean, that's something that we've discussed and talked about. I mean, we're not trying to, the course is not intended to convert or,
Right.
It's an opportunity to engage in a civil discourse.
And I think that's fantastic. That's perfect. And as long as we can do that, presenting all the facets, presenting all the different viewpoints, and letting the kids get in and dig in and find out and discuss, etc. We just have to be very conscious of that, I think, in this environment.
I agree. And I think it's important for students to learn how to engage in conversations where they're listening to each other's sides or opinions or whatever, without discrediting them immediately, and having that conversation, which I think is really important.
And Michelle, I have a lot of faith in you. Okay, you know that. Okay, so well done. And I think it's something that it's important that that we offer this, that we give our kids the opportunity to engage, to understand, to listen to different sides of the arguments, and et cetera, become well versed. So I think it's great.
I think this is a great program. I think possibly following with Glenn, wanting to think that it's going to be a little bit flexible as far as who you end up with in those classes, that they, that it's sort of guided as to how the feelings are. I mean, I guess if people are on a straight mode, that they're looking outside the box, but at the same time, if they're already looking outside the box, that they're not brought back in. I just want to make sure that there is this flexibility where if people are really looking out towards different situations that maybe we're not dealing with in Wilton, but we're dealing with in the United States or in the world, that's brought up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Gretchen. In the 6141, we wrote about windows and mirrors. And mirrors, and this is like the current thinking in reading and literary theory with high school and college students, that students read books that are mirrors to their lives and that reinforce their beliefs, values, or maybe challenge them actually. But also they look at texts that are different. Those are windows into other people's lives. So they learn about other perspectives, other experiences that you're right, that many Wilton students may not experience, or maybe some of them are experiencing, but aren't talking about.
Yeah.
So I think the way I imagine it happening would be very welcoming to everybody. And I think in this time, we need to be able to listen to each other and have conversations without starting a Thanksgiving family argument.
Yeah.
I would say too that, the surrounding towns have found great success with this. I talked to a student recently who's taking a course called Other Voices, Other Rooms. And I think the idea we go back to when you talk about windows and mirrors is underrepresentation. And we're not preparing kids for a life only in Wilton. And we've talked about the Wilton bubble, and understand that the course is all types of things, whether it's the immigrant experience and how we're adding to that, whether it's religious diversity, whether it's racial or ethnic diversity, LGBTQ issues, socioeconomic diversity, as far as underrepresented populations. So again, I think the idea is that we not only want to prepare them for life, whether that's academic life, professional life, personal life, that goes beyond their zip code in which they live. And we want to make sure that they're thoughtful and responsible and empathetic people. And I think this course is going to be rigorous, but I also think it's going to be one of those courses. We left it as a non-honors course. I think you're going to have a lot of students of a variety of different abilities and skill sets want to take this course, and it will be student driven. So I just wanted to add to that we're looking at authentic products, and our kids are doing this anyway, whether we guide them or not. They are moving towards these type of activities. We've seen it recently with gun violence. We've seen it recently with social protests against racial justice or LGBTQ issues. But I just want to say that they're moving forward, and it would be nice if they had some adult and scholarly guidance on that. The other thing I want to say is the path is well set. There are social justice teaching standards. So we are not inventing this. This is something that is across the country that people go to learn how to teach this type of issues and how to do it in a non-biased way.
Yeah, and that's great, Heather. I think both you and Michelle will do a great job. I just think we need to be sensitive to the risk involved associated with doing a course like this. I have all the faith in the world in the two of you and making this thing work. And our kids need it. They really do. You cannot escape in today's environment the issues that you're going to cover in this course. And they need to understand how to look at them, how to view them, how to think about them. But I think it's a great course, and I'm sure I would imagine you're going to get a lot of interest in this course, but it comes with risk.
Okay.
The other thing to remember is the board. Sorry, I didn't just mean to speak over you. The other thing to remember is the board has in place, and has for a long time had in place, a very good and very wise policy on teaching anything that could be in any way controversial, and stressing that we do it in a way that's not doctrinaire, and designed to just be inquiry based and let students go where the facts and the evidence takes them. And that policy is on the mind of everyone that wrote this 6141, and it's a good policy, and that's why we have it. So I think you'll find that circumscribes what the project of this course, and some of those concerns will be allayed by that.
Yeah, it's a difficult topic area right now. You guys have a challenge in front of you, and but you're up for it, no doubt.
Okay, I just had two quick questions. Well, maybe they're not quick, but one of them was you alluded to there are standards out there for teaching tolerance. I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about where that comes from. And then my second question would be, just as showing my age, but going back when offering when I was a college or graduate student, a course in, say, women's literature. So that kind of meant that the other courses were off the hook. Women's literature was over here and not part of, the American canon or the British canon or whatever. So I just wondered, what your thoughts are, if we want a little bit more diversity in some of our literature courses where we have the opportunity in terms of, author's background, how this affects it. And again, just very briefly, I don't mean to go in depth tonight.
Thank you, Debbie. So Teaching Tolerance for Social Justice is a nonprofit organization that advocates for access, equity, rights, participation, and advocacy. And those would be sort of the underlying standards. We also connected them with the Connecticut core standards for English, reading, writing, listening, speaking. And to your other question, I think some of our courses, for example, survival in the contemporary world, we do teach texts that address sort of different issues. We have the new international literature course that offers students a perspective of what it's like to live in another country and what that experience is. So I think this course is just another way to enhance that and support students as they become adults in this society.
Also, Michelle, I know because I teach many sections of American Experience, I have the pleasure of teaching Black Boy by Richard Wright, but that's not how necessarily racism manifests today. So I think that they're getting some experience with it, but I think what's so important with this course and what students have told us again and again is they want relevant and new and modern literature. So I think it builds upon what we already have, and no one is off the hook for these issues, but this really kind of condenses them into a course, and we have promised everything that we have is 21st century, not 20th, it is everything, and I think 2001 is the oldest piece we picked, that everything is very highly relevant and thoughtful of their world. So I just wanted to add that we have that in courses, but I think sometimes the modern element is missing from their lives, and they feel disconnected and detached from it because of that.
Okay, thanks for making that point. All right, and this could go on, but I'm also sort of cognizant of everyone's time. So if any board members have other comments or questions, we will email you and then come back to it next week. So thank you. All right, totally different field, percussion.
Now for something completely different.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak. So we'd like to propose two classes for the music department. The first is a percussion ensemble. We currently have two levels of band at Wilton High School. There's the concert band and the wind ensemble. And both of those groups have wind, brass, and percussion students in them, which all differ a little bit. But of course, brass and woodwind instruments share the same basic principles of blowing into something and moving your fingers to make sound. But the percussionists, meanwhile, are hitting things and scraping and shaking objects. So it's a completely different method of making music, but they're stuck in the same class. So while the instructor is focusing on topics that are only relevant to 2/3 of the class, the percussionists are sort of twiddling their thumbs in the back. So we'd like to propose a better solution to this problem, which is to have a third section of band, which would be for all the percussionists from wind ensemble and the concert band. And they would be able to do two things. They would be first and foremost learning their own technique for their instruments and their own repertoire, specifically for percussion ensemble, which is a type of repertoire that we have not really heard in our concerts before, but that would feature them and offer them a real challenge specific to their instruments. And then they would also learn the music for the other two bands and join those ensembles on stage, which could be very easily put together before a concert. So I think this offering would allow the percussionists to receive a much more high quality music education and also sort of raise the status of the instrument within the school, which I would imagine would encourage more younger students to pursue percussion study into the high school years.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, Malcolm, do we use in our percussion arena box drums, or is that one of our instruments that we work with? I haven't seen it, so that's why I asked the question.
We would have to ask our resident percussion expert, Mr. Troy Williams, who is our new lead band director this year, and he is himself a fantastic percussionist, which makes this a really perfect year to introduce this course. Percussion ensemble is offered by several other towns around us, but I don't think any of them have a percussion expert who would be teaching them such as we would. So he tells me that we have all the necessary equipment to start this program now. I'm sure down the line he may be interested in purchasing some specialty items, but we have the basic things that we need right now.
It's just such a great instrument, a unique instrument from a percussion perspective. You get incredible sound from it in a variety of different ways. I'm just curious about it because I haven't seen it in any of our presentations.
For all I know, it's hiding in the back room. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. Okay.
All right, thank you. Sounds exciting.
So our next course, I'll move on to the next one, is for Introduction to Music Technology. And Wilton High School currently has a very successful band, orchestra, and chorus program. And those are doing fantastically well. But what we're lacking is an entry point for students who have not studied music seriously before arriving at Wilton High School. So a student who did not take band, orchestra, or chorus in middle school arrives at Wilton High School, and there's not really a great music offering for that student. The closest thing we have to that is an Introduction to Music Theory course, which has not been very well attended in recent years. And I think the reason for that is that the students who are really interested in music theory are, first of all, already studying music in a fairly serious way. And secondly, are going to take the AP Music Theory, which is offered every other year, alternating with Intro to Music Theory. So we believe that a better use of that course time would be to offer an Introduction to Music Technology. We can do that in the existing Mac lab with almost exclusively existing resources. We would need a small purchase of MIDI controllers to complete the setup that would be necessary for a basic music tech class. And students would be involved in the very real world and authentic task of creating music on computers, which is the way that almost all the music you hear nowadays is created. And this would be a very wide open course. They would have to, of course, learn the basics of different modes of production of music through computers, but then students would be invited to take those wherever they would like and develop their own projects. Oh, and sorry, additionally, as an important point, because this would be replacing another course, there's no additional cost associated with that.
Okay. Questions, comments? All right. I think a lot of us would love to take that course, so.
I was just curious, would the AP Music Theory course still be running alternate to that?
Yes, correct. Currently, AP Music Theory alternates years with Introduction to Music Theory. So what we would propose would be an alternating of AP Music Theory and Introduction to Music Technology.
But so this is for people who have not taken music at all in the middle school.
This course would be open to students who are either in band, orchestra, and chorus, because the topic is completely separate. Their subject knowledge that they would have from those other courses would be very useful, but it would not be necessary as an entry point to this course. There would be no prerequisite.
Okay.
So the hope is that it would draw new students into the music department instead of simply taking students from the band, orchestra, and chorus.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I think that's a great approach and a welcome one for the high school. The more kids in music, the better.
And I'm sorry, one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Would this be something that you would reach out to maybe freshmen who are coming in who are not involved with music to make sure that they're aware that this exists?
Sure. Well, I think we would definitely coordinate with the middle school music teaching staff. We do have courses at the middle school that are for students who are taking general music, who are not in the band, orchestra, and chorus program. And they do a variety of things in those courses. And in a normal year, they do often use some of the music technology we have at school. So during that time of instruction, they could be introduced to the fact that we have this offering at the high school, and should they wish to pursue it, they could do that.
Okay.
We also, Gretchen, we would have all those courses in our program of studies. And when Debbie Marino and Pam Scott go to the middle school to present courses, they highlight the new courses. So they would highlight all 5 of these new courses if the board would approve them.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I just want to thank all the presenters tonight. We won't be acting on this until next week. You know, we usually take some time to think about it, send any last minute questions, and have a final sort of discussion next week. But thank you for all your work. And for those people at home listening, while this might have seemed a short discussion on each course, if you go to your board documents, a much more detailed description of all of these courses is available. There's been a lot of groundwork, and then it went to our teaching and learning committee. So these are well thought out, long time in the planning. So thank you, everyone. Okay.
And we'll encourage all our teachers to sign off at this point. Thanks for your presentation.
Oh, yeah, you're excused.
And move on to your evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so we're moving on to Ixl Diagnostics. All right.
So we're going to turn it over to Chuck, Trudy, and Karen.
Yeah, we need, someone to explain that to us.
Sure. Given the situation that we found ourselves in at the end of last year, we decided that it would be really important to gather some information on our students' academic skill levels when they came back this year. I think, as you can imagine, that would be critical for some of the decisions we need to make around moving forward with the curriculum and targeting supports for specific students. And so we landed on this thing called Ixl Diagnostics. That's the tool we decided we would use to gather that information. Some of you may know that Ixl is a program that our students and teachers have been using for several years now for skill, practice, and review. And so they're familiar with it, and we decided that because of that familiarity, it wouldn't be a difficult lift for them to use the diagnostic piece. The advantage to this also is that it gives real-time feedback and recommendations to teachers for what students need to learn. And I think it also provides some better direction for teachers in how to use the Ixl review and skill practice components of it. And so I'm very thankful to start this by saying that the information we've received is better than I anticipated. Okay, so we're going to start showing this. You know, a lot of people were making some very dire predictions about what the impact of the pandemic would have on student achievement. And so I was worried that we would see a bigger lift than what we're seeing in the data right now, at least with this data. I don't want to sugarcoat it. There are areas that are in need of improvement. And Trudy and Karen are here tonight to talk about how we're going to support the teachers in using this information to address those areas of concern. Now, before I turn this over to Trudy and Karen, I do want to explain a little bit about the scores. Because the Ixl Diagnostic Scores are a little different than the scores you're used to seeing from standardized tests, such as the MAP. The MAP is what is known as a norm-referenced assessment, which means that we compare student performance to other student performance so that we can get a sense of where the students are relative to each other. Ixl Diagnostics is what's known as a Criterion referenced assessment. So we're comparing students' performance against a standard or a skill set so that we can get a sense of how much of the curriculum they have mastered. It's an important distinction. This information is actually more useful for teachers because it tells them what students need to learn. What it doesn't tell us is how students are performing compared to other students. That makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and have Trudy and Karen go through their slideshow here, and then we can answer any questions you may have at the end. So I'm going to turn this over to Trudy and Karen.
As Chuck was explaining, with every day that we were out of the buildings during our spring emergency closure, concern understandably grew among parents and teachers alike about what learning we were delivering in the emergency e-learning model was sticking. Fortunately, unfinished learning is not a new concept to teachers. Teachers have been surfacing unfinished learning or learning regression from the previous year ever since kids have been off during the summer. As our emergency e-learning bled into the summer vacation months, we started to brace ourselves for potential substantial gaps in knowledge, understanding, and skills, some of which may have been due to the structure of the e-learning environment itself and or student participation or the lack thereof.
Great. Chuck gave you a little bit of an overview about Ixl Diagnostics. Essentially, the great benefit of it was that it gave us an opportunity to quickly identify what our students were ready to learn. And in doing so, enabled us to begin to surface any unfinished learning. Two of our buildings have fully taken the test, Cider Mill and Middlebrook. I believe the high school is planning to do it sometime in the near future. A little bit more information around the nature of the adaptive test. It was great because you can give the test in small chunks rather than in one sitting. Generally, it takes about 110 to 125 questions for students to achieve a pinpoint score, although some students took as many as 200 items to reach their diagnostic threshold. Generally, these were students who were significantly above grade level. Go ahead, Karen.
This is a sample report, and as you can see, it's very student friendly. The learner sees this when they reach the diagnostic threshold. It provides skill areas to reinforce and to extend, and students are assessed in 6 strands in math and 4 strands in ELA. This student has an overall math score of 770. The first digit represents the grade level, so this is a 7th grade student. And the second 2 numbers represent the percentage toward mastery of end of year standards, or you could think of it as that middle digit as approximately the month of the 7th grade school year. This student had an overall performance then compatible with the 7th month of 7th grade, or mastering about 70% of the end of year expectations articulated by the standards. You can see areas of relative strength as well as areas to refine and grow. And the tool reveals the upcoming learning and what the student is ready to learn directly to the student, offering the student a high degree of agency when it comes to setting goals for his or her own learning. This is the ELA portion of the report. It's actually all on one page, but so that you could see it, we sectioned it off a little bit. In ELA, students are assessed in 4 areas: reading strategies, writing strategies, vocabulary, grammar, and mechanics. They also receive an overall reading score, which you can see here. This 4th grader, as you can see with the overall language arts level, is working toward about 60% mastery of the grade level standards. This student has a strength in grammar and mechanics, and this student is performing the skill work expected of, that is commensurate with the overall reading level here. So you can also think of this 4th grader as demonstrating the skill work that is comparable with the 6th month of 4th grade, but doing that skill work in an early 4th grade level text. And the scores noted on this table are average scores by grade level for grades 3 through 8. And they're that conglomerate overall ELA score that includes reading, writing, vocabulary, grammar, and mechanics. As you can see, this tool is not showing us the gaps that we anticipated. This strand data will help inform small group instruction as we grow students toward end of the year standards. And the overall reading level data will provide teachers with a starting point as they begin to match texts to readers. Although tonight we're talking specifically about what we have learned about students from Ixl Diagnostics, which is administered in grades 3 and up, it's worth noting that some of our youngest learners in grades 1 and 2 may be evidencing more unfinished learning on some reading assessments, particularly running records, which allow us to spy in on a reader's mistakes so we can analyze what they are ready to learn next. This potential unfinished learning should not be surprising, given that our students' learning, along with every kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade student last year, their learning was interrupted at a critical juncture while they were still building their foundational skills. Teachers are poised and prepared to address these skill gaps alongside the grade level curriculum, and will further refine these small group plans as they gather more data about what our youngest readers are ready to learn next month when they take the NWEA's map for the primary grades.
Thank you, Karen. Math trends, as shown here, are consistent with prior year's data in that learning gaps that often begin in the elementary school do grow over time. In typical years, and to a somewhat greater extent this year, we reduce instructional time exactly when the curriculum becomes more challenging in grades 6, 7, and 8. In addition, the learning models used in middle school during emergency e-learning may not have met the needs of some students, although it's difficult to determine what extent student participation in e-learning or the absence of participation contributed to the learning gaps as well. The data confirms the need for a purposeful plan to address those gaps. Classroom structures across all learning models, in-person, hybrid, remote, reduce available instructional time. Teachers need collaborative time to identify, analyze, and plan for addressing the learning gaps. School schedules need to shelter time for this collaboration, as well as provide necessary instructional time, and the flexibility to adjust our approach to instruction when moving from one model to another. So in other words, from hybrid to in-person to remote and back again. How are we approaching the unfinished learning in math? For grades 3 through 5, teachers will use collaborative time in their instructional effectiveness teams using Ixl data and other classroom data to plan for instruction. They will build in opportunities to provide targeted instruction and feedback to students, addressing the needs of grade. We plan to engage in the same approach in grades 6, 7, and 8, although this approach will be more challenging in the current schedule, both in terms of providing collaborative time for teachers and instructional time for students. This final slide just sort of frames our overall approach to unfinished learning. I just want to hit on a few of those points. There's 5 important components to addressing unfinished learning, and that's starting with, we need to teach the curriculum of the current grade and embed prior learning just in time to support the current content. This does require adjusting content, the use of formative evidence as to what to address, what students need and where to go next. And collaborative time for teachers is an important component in this work. Depth over breadth has become a bit of a cliche, but it's nevertheless true. Teachers need time to plan for deep learning opportunities, and students need time to engage in those deep learning opportunities. The curriculum is built on the major work of the grade and does not skip necessary content. Rather, it prepares students for the next grade or course. Another important component is including every learner, and that requires planning, formative assessment, and time to address the individual needs of students, typically in small group settings. And finally, we need to engage in clear and frequent communication with home about what students are learning and how that learning can be supported at home in order to allow the learning to continue both in and out of the classroom, virtual or in person. Thank you.
Hey, Trudy, I have a quick question. Can you go back to the math scores?
Sure. Yep.
I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly. So what this is showing is in 6th grade, they're operating at a level that would be, I guess I'm confused why it says 6. I thought we were looking at the middle number, like that was the 5th month.
These are the average pinpoint scores. So of all the students who engaged in the Ixl Diagnostics and achieved a pinpoint score, the average score for a 6th grader was 557, meaning 5th grade, right. 5th to 6th month.
Yep.
So for 7th grade, they're in the 1st month, and for 8th grade, they're in the 1st month.
Correct.
So that looks like there's a lot of room for improvement at those grades.
Yes.
7th grade, that's in the 6th year. So 7th graders are reading at a 6th grade level in the 1st month.
Math, yes.
Math.
Okay.
It's math. Now this doesn't break down. This is an average overall score. It doesn't break down those scores by the standards or the component areas that you saw in the sample report.
So, but it looks like the older the kids are getting, they're almost like a whole grade behind.
Yeah, and that is typically how learning gaps progress. They start small, and if they're not fully addressed, they grow over time.
And how are the parents? You mentioned it's really important to communicate this to the parents. Besides this right now, are the parents getting the individual Ixl scores for each child?
Every parent and child has access to their Ixl scores by virtue of their account. They can see everything. It's important to note that this is a starting point, right? The idea is with this score and with each individual student's scores, teachers are able to target what skills individual students need to work on. This, again, is an average score. There are students who are significantly above this and some students who are below it. So I just want to reiterate, this is an average score.
Can I ask, in the average score, could it be one particular set of skills or a group of skills that might be driving down the overall number and not, do you understand what I'm saying?
I hear you. And I've done a lot of work looking at the individual scores by building by grade to see patterns and trends. There are patterns and trends. It's not one particular area. There's an area, there are areas, for example, measurement always seems to lag, and that's kind of across the grade. So that's an overall area that probably needs to be addressed. There isn't usually one area, though. They're grouped.
Judy, I guess I'm just continue to be troubled about our math performance. It has been for historically here in this district a weak spot. We've always excelled in the English language arts area. Math continues to be our weak spot, and I just don't understand, with all the emphasis that we've put on it, the attention we pay to it. I'm just deeply troubled that we cannot get this thing moving in the right direction.
Glenn, I think you're absolutely right, and I think we're all concerned. And so, and I think it takes a much longer time to discuss it than we have tonight. So I would really like to see this as at an upcoming meeting, so we can really dive into this.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But I'm trying to back you up. It seems like in math, except for third grade, no one seems to be starting at grade level, if I'm reading that correctly. Whereas in language arts, the good news is most kids seem well advanced even for their grade level. They're starting kind of further down the road. Am I right?
Yeah. No.
Grade, you should have a 500 at the start of the year and a 580 at the end, or a 600 at the end.
It's important to note, I think, that this is a classroom assessment that's designed to help a teacher identify what a student is ready to learn next, rather than to measure an achievement level. So I think that's an important distinction to make.
And Debbie, the only correction I would make,
we're going to need more discussion about this.
Yeah, Debbie, the only correction I would make to what you said is, it's not that nobody is at the grade level. This is
I know. I'm sorry. As a class, you're right. I'm terribly sorry about that. Yes, I'm sure there are many exceptions, but this is revealing news that we really need more time to sort of delve into. So I just wonder if we could come back to this and look at math more specifically at a relatively soon upcoming meeting. Jen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. Just a quick question before we jump topics. Both of these classes, like math and reader language arts, are both saying that we're not including all students in these numbers. Can you just share a little bit about who we're not or what's not included?
It's not that they're not included. At the time this data was captured, not all students had achieved a pinpoint score. Now, the pinpoint score shows up as one number. It's a bubble on the graph that the teacher sees. That doesn't mean that other students weren't engaged in the assessment. they were engaged but didn't have a pinpoint score. They might have a score range. Now, the beauty of this is that even with a score range, teachers still get skill recommendations and actionable data, whether they have a pinpoint score or a score range. So achieving that pinpoint score isn't necessarily the be-all, end-all. It's just the calculation of the average that Ixl does only includes the pinpoint scores.
Okay. So ultimately, though, that's also skewing our overall numbers.
Well,
I don't know that it's skewing them.
The kids who are taking longer to get to a pinpoint score are outliers, Jen. That's fair, but they are outliers on both ends. Ones that are performing significantly above grade level are also taking a long time to have a pinpoint score. So I'm not sure it's skewing.
I think that's what I mean by skewing, though. It's offsetting on both ends, possibly what our actual number could be, either whether it's in a better way or a negative way.
Yeah, we don't really know that. The other thing to mention is that depending on how the teachers use this, like I said, our district has used Ixl as practice, skills practice for several years. Many teachers and many students are very familiar with the tool. That score is constantly changing. It would likely be a different number today if I went on and tapped and looked at it, because as students begin to learn and as they engage in practice, they can do a dozen questions or so weekly or periodically, and that score will be continually updated.
And Trudy, what was the date of these?
They were administered at different times. Generally, they were built into the timeframes that were allocated to the reentry units, anywhere from the first four or 5 weeks. Karen, the math team.
I think Mandy's asking, when were these numbers pulled? Am I right, Mandy?
Yes.
We prepared this report for teaching and learning on the 13th, and the numbers were pulled the Friday before that.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you were asking when the assessments were given.
So 13th of October or 13th? Okay.
Yeah. All right. And again, this just bears so much more discussion.
Yeah.
So the good news is the language arts scores. So those look pretty healthy, unless I'm missing something. Glenn, yes.
Yeah. Chuck, one concern I have is that this helps us with grades 3 through 8. But my real concern is K through 2, which is the beginning, the foundation, the start. What tools do we have, if any, to really understand where those students are? Because those are the ones who seem to be the most negatively affected by the program that we've been on recently, the remote learning, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So in the lower grades, we are administering a more informal kind of a running record in math, but we also will be administering the map in about a month. So we'll be able to see how our kids are doing.
All right. Because
I would point out, Glenn, that the 3rd grade scores indicate that our 2nd graders did pretty well last year.
No, you're right. No, and that was great to see. But we don't know what the future holds or where we are. I think we really try, with all the letters we read from parents over the last few months, those are the kids that seem to struggle the most with our format. And I'm concerned that as they move forward, where are they going to be? And how quickly can we arrest whatever gaps there are and improve and focus on getting them back up to speed? I guess, because we're going to sacrifice 3 grades if we don't do something, if we don't understand where they are, what the issues are, what the gaps are, then how can we address them and try and get them fixed as quickly as possible?
Well, rest assured, Glenn, that we have the data we need to know where the kids are.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. And again, I think, if we can even just have a math workshop for the board, it might be better to take it, out of a regular meeting kind of format and look at this from all sorts of different angles. So certainly appreciate you surfacing and showing, where we are. And again,
can I just ask a quick question? You
yes.
said that the younger grades are going to be assessed in about a month on the map. Are the older grades going to be assessed within the next month as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you for that report. Although, as we've all said, you've heard from all of us, this needs a lot more further discussion. So thank you. Sorry, I'm kind of losing track of the agenda. Learning model update, Kevin.
Great, thanks. So tonight we wanted to just take a few minutes and provide a couple of different updates. One is from Andre Leonardi regarding special education, and the second, I'm going to ask Frank Compar just to give you a 2-minute update on our work around technology and professional learning. So Andrea, welcome.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking a minute to take a specific look at the education of children with disabilities throughout this unprecedented time. Let me start by saying, these are hard times for everyone, and everyone has been facing them with courage and fortitude, but for no one more than children with disabilities, their families, and the teachers and staff who serve them have the challenges presented with just unprecedented creativity and the need for constant communication, collaboration, and creative problem solving for our students, for their families, and for the teachers and staff who serve them. So I continue to be extraordinarily proud to serve this community and to serve the people in this department. They've worked hard from day one and continue to work hard to help solve the problems and adjust the courses and curriculum for each and every student each and every day. That being said, we continue to serve students age 3 through 22 here in the Wilton Public Schools. So I'll start with our preschoolers. At the beginning of the year, we made some choices that in order to continue our current programming and meet the CDC guidelines, we needed to cap our classes at 10. And we did so. We also gave a little headroom as we continue to get referrals from both the Birth to 3 system and new referrals to special education for young children turning 3 who may need special education services. So our classes are capped at 10. That has put about 30 people into the waiting room or onto the wait list who would have been interested in coming to our school as typically developing peers, but who were unable to come this year because we had to cap our classes. But I am encouraged by the continuing interest in our preschool, and I'm very confident that once we are back up and running in a post-COVID environment, we will continue to have a waiting list for people who want to attend our preschool, and that revenue will come back and serve us well. In terms of our special education students in the K-5 domain, they are now attending school, as you know, 4 days a week, along with everyone else, and continue to have the full remote Wednesday. And we continue to work with families around how to make Wednesday and remote learning viable for some of our students. Some of our students are doing incredibly well in that environment, and for some it is quite challenging. So we work with the families. As you know, each and every child with a disability has a team of professionals, their planning and placement team that includes their parents who surround them. And that's their creative problem-solving team. That's the team that works with those families, with those children, to find paths forward to make meaningful progress on all of their educational goals, not only the general curriculum goals, but also their individual goals that are addressed in their IEP. Our target right now for each team is to make sure that each and every student is receiving the services outlined in their IEP. Some of those services are being done in a remote or teletherapy type of way. On Wednesdays, for example, the teletherapy work continues, but when they are face-to-face learning, they are receiving face-to-face learning. And so we continue to see growth and progress. As with any year in special education, there are students who are having challenges, and those teams are working with those families to try to identify ways to and paths forward for those students. And we'll continue to do that as we go forward. Middle and high school, who continue in the hybrid model right now, we currently have a cadre of students who are our most complex learners, who are coming 4 days a week. And we have just added other individuals who are now also coming 4 days a week at the middle and high school. And those classes, those supports are going well. The students who are coming are really happy to be there, and they're benefiting from the supports they're getting. If I can just give a quick note on how that works, because we don't want to cross the cohort in order to maintain the safety of all the students, we don't want to cross the A-day students with the A and B day students. So the students who are coming in 4 days are, they come in and they're doing their remote learning, albeit in a supported manner with their special ed staff and some additional daily substitutes who support and supervise. But they're getting ready access to support to make the remote learning more meaningful for them and help them with whatever executive functioning weaknesses or other challenges they might have that make remote learning from home difficult and more difficult to manage than some other students. That is it is a special education environment, but it's not meant to be one that is segregated for disability reasons. It's really a health and safety issue. It's the only way we can bring them in safely for the 4 days without crossing the cohorts. And so that's what we've decided to do at this time. Our Community Steps program, our 18 to 22-year-olds, as you can imagine, community support is, and the community has been a challenge in these times because there are so few things that we're able to do and do safely under the guidance. What we have been doing is we've made connections with a number of our outdoor facilities where students are doing community-based activities where they can do that safely outdoors. And so Ambler Farm, for example, and some of the other outdoor arenas have been very gracious and continue to welcome our students, and our students are doing well in those environments. And then they're doing a fair amount of activities of daily living and fitness activities where they can do so safely. And as things open up, we will continue to work with them to make that viable. We do have some students who are working in the community in businesses that continue to employ our kids, and we are supporting them there as long as we can do so safely and both the student and the business are following CDC guidelines. So kind of that's a 3-minute update on a vast world of special education. We have a lot of tremendous successes that we can point to, and we have some challenges that we're climbing those mountains every day. But again, I have to say, from our principals to our assistant principals and to all the special education and related service staff who are, they are working extraordinarily hard, not only to meet the needs of the students who are in front of them right now, but also to make up for things that didn't get done in the spring: evaluations, new referrals to special education, triennial evaluations, comprehensive evaluations. So they are doing yeoman's work, and I could not be more proud to serve them.
Andre, I'm sorry if I missed it. How are our Genesis friends making out?
Oh, Genesis. How could I forget Genesis? Genesis is doing great. We had a number of students, new students, join us, both returning from out-of-district placements. We had 6 students return from out-of-district placements this summer. parents chose and contacted us and asked to come back, and said they'd heard great things and wanted to come back. Many of them are at Genesis, and they're doing beautifully. We started 3 new students last week, and they're doing beautifully. We're currently hovering around 20 students. We've taken over all of trackside every day to spread them out and be able to use that facility, and spread the kids out and do the social distancing. Those students are coming 4 days a week, and are thrilled to do so. We've had a number of students who've needed to quarantine, so they've kind of used the technology to enter the school in a quarantined way remotely, and that has worked out beautifully as well. So Genesis continues to do extraordinary work. Those teachers are, what they're creating there is farther along than I would have expected for what I still call a startup. They are much farther along, and those teachers deserve all the credit in the world. They've created something very, very special.
Andrea, can I just ask a quick question? In our teaching and learning committee, we had spoken a little bit about finding a way for our special education population to have some sort of a voice with the board in some sort of a private way. And I know you and your team have been working on something. Can you maybe share the status of that?
Yeah, we're going to put in, a survey into the field to our students, or the parents of our students with disabilities. We decided to also survey some of the students. We're talking about, at least in the middle and high school, and perhaps even at Cider Mill, doing some work with students to give us some information. We're crafting the questions now and coming up with that. I hope to have the questions into the field probably at the end of the first week of November, so that then we'll be able to have some actionable feedback before the Thanksgiving break.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
I do just want to say, we continue to run monthly town hall style forums for the parents of children with disabilities. We do a forum for our Collaborative Center parents. Collaborative Center are our most complex learners. And then for all students with IEPs, and a third forum for all students who are being served under 504 plans. So we do those once a month. Parents can log in, ask questions. And we also have a running email address, ssnewsletter@wiltonps.org, for where parents of children with disabilities can post questions. And that helps us frame the agenda for all of our forum work. So we continue to do that. Our next one's coming up in the first week of November.
Just a quick question, Andrea. How are we doing with SEPTA? Our relationship there? Are they able? Are they helping us? Or
Oh yeah. SEPTA. We have a great relationship with SEPTA. We work collaboratively with them, and they with us. They're part of all of this. So. SEPTA is a wonderful addition to Wilton, and we work with them. I meet with their executive board. We attend their meetings, and we engage with them, and they with us around all of these issues.
All right, that's great. They can be a great ally and a great support for us. I think it's that's great. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Well, Andrea, once again, just like speaking to all the principals, I'm always knocked out, or just so impressed with the planning that you and your staff have put into it, and the determination and the skills of the teachers, to make it work. There are challenges, as there are all over, but there's a lot of good news there too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Fran, so she can just do a quick technology update.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about some of the professional learning that's coming up.
So first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide this update. I wanted to start by sharing something that is non-COVID related, but was a real honor for me this week. On Wednesday, I attended the virtual ceremony provided by the American Association for School Librarians. It was a virtual awards ceremony that was to take place in the spring in Washington, D.C., and obviously was postponed until this week. The attendance was because our own superintendent, Dr. Kevin Smith, was awarded the American Association for School Librarian Administrator of the Year and was presented with that award at a ceremony of about 100 people. And it was for his dedication, his strong commitment, his vision, and his support of modern learning environments in our library learning commons. And just to give you an idea, if you Google the ASL Administrator of the Year, his name and the entire information comes up. There's only one superintendent from across the country that gets recognized each year. And this year it was our own Dr. Kevin Smith. So that was a real honor for me to be at that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Congratulations, Kevin. That's wonderful.
You didn't tell us. What?
Oh. Huh? Thank you, Fran, for letting us know.
I needed to throw that in there as the beginning to my update because I didn't think he was going to tell you.
Yeah.
Oh,
wow. So, and it really does segue into what I'm about to update you on very well. Wilton has not only received state award for the best library media program in the state last year, but now with the Distinguished Administrator of the Year for ASL, it is no wonder that we have such an incredible LLC team and tech team that's been able to usher us into this very, very challenging year. Listening to the courses and all the presentations on curriculum, it makes me feel like what we're doing has, hopefully been helpful in the sense that we've been able to provide a digital ecosystem that's supporting a learning model that is and could be ever changing. And one of the things that I just wanted to point out is as I've watched the models changing from the hybrid to the in-person, one of the things that struck me is that on the technology end, we were able to make those changes fairly, painlessly. And it was because there's been a lot of upfront work to create this digital ecosystem with, Schoology, PowerSchool, and quite honestly, about 300 other digital tools. You heard about Ixl tonight, but there are so many others that we integrate and we have to make work seamlessly so that students are able to access what they need in order to be successful in advancing curriculum and continuing learning in whatever model that they happen to be in. So in the past couple of months, we've done a lot of PD. Our teachers have engaged in creating course materials. I think I looked at it this morning and we've now have over 12,000 course materials created in Schoology alone. We have over 2,000 parents who signed up for accounts so they're able to log in to their child's Schoology account and see, homework and, what's going on and assignments and grades and those types of things that we didn't have in place last year. We continue to, and I have one model, be responsive. So we continue to be responsive. So even in our planning for professional learning and what we're doing right now for technical support, we're trying to be as supportive as possible with the needs that are surfacing. So as most recently and, going into the end of quarter, we are experiencing, I think anybody that's a parent that might be on this call as well knows that syncing systems is a really big challenge. That's been something that we've been working on for the last couple of weeks. It surfaced certainly at the high school and at the middle school at Middlebrook. The syncing between PowerSchool and Schoology, we are continuing to work on. I've been sending out school messenger updates so that parents know what is, what is the most current information. And the last newsletter that I sent, I did apprise families of the fact that Schoology would have the most up-to-date grades, and that we are continuing to work to make that align with what's in PowerSchool. And of course, we're going to make sure that that happens. We're putting additional resources on it. I think Eric can speak to on that side the work that we're doing. And I'm working with the LLC and tech staff on professional learning. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing more training because we've done a little bit of training on gradebook and making sure that things are set up properly. And as we move into Election Day, where we do have some time to provide teachers on professional learning, my hope is that we can provide teachers with time to plan forward and work to create new units as we're moving forward into the next quarter, but at the same time, take a look at how we can improve what we already have so that we can make the students' experience, more predictable and more consistent across subject areas and subject content areas and the such. So that is really where we are. I would say that within the next couple of weeks, we should be able to get the Schoology PowerSchool sync fixed. That's been our priority right now. And, I know that this has been a really big lift for our teachers, and I continue to be in awe of them for doing this because we were in Google Classroom, let's face it, for about 6 years for our teachers. And we went into this new learning management system with the understanding that we were going to have some really difficult situations this year. And, it has come to fruition, whether it's, having to provide at the moment substitutes into our Schoology classrooms, whether, like I said, it's, changing learning systems, whether it's providing our remote learners with, more of a partner at home. We've been able to do that. So there's a lot of good news, but I won't sugarcoat it and say that it's perfect. We have a lot of work to do ahead, and, we're up for the challenge.
Fran, thanks so much. I appreciate you offering it. And it is like any new system, not without its significant challenges. So, but I appreciate the commitment to working toward it. And, I know our teachers need it, and we're going to rely on you to deliver it. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, is there a motion to defer the enrollment update until our next meeting? I'm looking at the time. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Gretchen. All in favor? All right. So let's move on to discussing the learning model at Middlebrook.
Great. So, well, let me just find my notes here. All right. So let me just start with, I have a revised recommendation coming on the heels of our meeting last week. And so my revised recommendation is that the board does not take action tonight. So we defer action and just wait. And so the reason for that is this. In short, the COVID positivity numbers, both locally here in Wilton, across Fairfield County, and as I'm sure you're aware, across Connecticut, have come up fairly substantially in the last week, and the trend has been, increasing over the last several. So I spoke with both Dr. Mackin and Barry Bogle this week, and so they both concurred. What I'd suggested to them is that, internally we would continue to plan to have students return, so we'll get the facility ready, but we don't bring students back, and they both thought that was a prudent recommendation. So really, what's changed, what's different, and it's where we are, it's the environment with respect to COVID transmission activities. So I think you've probably seen and caught the stories that in the preceding couple of weeks, the trend started to tick up slightly. So if we were at 4.3 4 or 5 weeks ago, that moved to 4.5 average new cases per day on a 7-day rolling average. Today, the Department of Public Health just published brand new data, and Fairfield County is now at 9 new cases, and that's now over a 14-day average, not just a 7-day average. So we've seen a substantial jump in just a single week. Last week we were at 6.4. The week before that we were at 5.4. In addition, all of the supporting indicators that the DPH publishes are also trending in a similar direction. So we look at the State Department of Public Health data that's published weekly. It's they publish the number of new cases on a rolling 14-day average. And then we also look at another data site that Dr. Mackin also uses, and we've talked about that one here. That's covidactnow.org. And so that website's much more dynamic. It updates daily, and it tracks daily case rates. So it's not a rolling average like the DPH tracks. And so I look at that, multiple times a day. And just today, it had been over the last several days sitting at about 9.3, 9.4. Today, it jumped to 11.7 per 100,000 new cases per day. So it's over that, that 10 threshold. The other alarming bit of data that corresponds to that, I think that's no surprise, is the infection rate is also increasing. So not only are there more infections, it's spreading more rapidly. And so that's really the fundamental concern, and the concern driving the recommendation to wait. I'll share with you, I'm going to share my screen here so you can see this. Give me 1 second. The state also just revised and republished its Addendum 4, which we looked at about a month or so ago. So you should all be able, are you able to see my screen at this point? Okay. So, sorry, is that it? That's correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, page 2. Okay.
Addendum 4. So this was just revised. It was revised yesterday, published today. What I wanted to call out to you is as a refresher. So initially, if you kind of go time a couple, the Department of Public Health published some guidance, and they set really kind of 3 tiers when referring specifically to daily averages of daily new cases. And so the kind of bottom tier was 10 or fewer, the middle tier was 10 to 25, and then the outer tier, the third tier, was 25 or more. And so they started with that, and then they added a recommendation, or some, I should say guidance, because it's not a solid recommendation, but that if you're under 10, you should more in-person learning. If you're in that 10 to 25 range, you should consider hybrid. If you're over 25, you should consider more remote learning. So that what they've done with this guidance, they've kept the tiers, they've updated the calculus so it reflects a rolling 14-day, not a 7-day. But then they've really softened the lines between, what do you do when you're moving, beyond 10 into that 10 to 25, beyond 25. And so when you actually read the document, and this is something I'll share with everybody, we'll put it on our website, and it just came out today, so I certainly need to study it more. But really the recommendation is, as it has been, to go back to consult with your local health officials, health director, medical advisor, director of nursing, and review strategies, review mitigation efforts, and then, propose a course of action. And so, at this point for us, we're at 9. I think looking at the trends across the state, across the region, I heard just a bit of news earlier that Westchester County on our border has had a significant spike. So, COVID's increasing all around us. So for those reasons, I'm recommending that we set up our facility, get ready, but we don't bring more kids back just yet, that we continue to consult with Barry and with Chrissy. And then we, monitor the trends, and, hopefully we get to a point soon where we see, a stable downward trend, and then that'll enable us to bring more students back. I'll stop there.
Kevin, one thing I just want to clarify before we get into it, you're going back and forth between Wilton and Fairfield County, because when you talk to the COVID Act now and they're saying 11.7, that's Fairfield County, but when you're talking into the 9, that's Wilton.
No, so Gretchen, so the two databases that I referenced one is the State Department of Public Health, and that 9 speaks to Fairfield County. It's an average of 9 new cases per day over 14 days. And then the 11.2 COVID Act now is also Fairfield County. The other note about the State Department of Public Health and why those numbers don't match, number one, it's the calculus, but the state, those numbers also lag, so you're looking at data that's a week to 2 weeks old.
Right, but specifically speaking in Wilton.
Right, so
you were specifically speaking Fairfield County. If you could specifically speak in Wilton.
So Wilton, let me pull up this map right here. Give me one. So there's a new tool, if I can find it here. There's a new tool that here it is. The State Department of Public Health also published. Here, I'll share my screen again so you can see it. And so this data is also lagging data. But this is you've probably heard some talk about in the media about the red zones in the state, and so that reference to red zones is referring to this map that was just recently published by the Department of Public Health, and it gives viewers a town by town view. So down here, this yellow, this is where we are. This is Wilton. And so over the last, you can see the reporting period was 10/4 to 10/17. So the data's old at this point, but it's per 100,000. And in the first week of that reporting period, there were 6 cases. In the second week, there were 8. For much more local information, Lynn Vanderslice typically updates. She had been updating, I think, twice a week or so. And I think because we have an increase in numbers now here locally, she's writing updates more frequently. I think the last one reported that we had 6 or 8 new cases. I think that was last night.
Yeah, she just sent a new one that we only had 1 case. And just on this, so we are still at 5.4 cases based on this data.
So the average is 5.4 here in Wilton over that 2-week period, 10/4 to 10/17. And you can see that they've created a legend here. So
right
in that kind of second tier. Yeah, and so I think that's one of the complexities here is there isn't hard and fast guidance anywhere that really directs our community or any other community in one direction or another. So we try to look at the best data that's available. We look at our mitigation strategies. We look at what's worked for us. I'm very proud of the fact today that we've had 2 cases reported in our schools, both at the high school. One on September 11th, another on 2 weeks ago. We haven't had any other positive cases in our other schools, and I think so. Comparatively, when you look at towns all around us, we've been very fortunate. To what can we attribute that? I think there's another question that we should dive into, but at least in our schools, I see lots of folks wearing masks and washing their hands, engaging in those mitigation strategies. I think across the community outside of school, people are doing the same, and so again, comparatively, we've had better results as a consequence. And so we really need to have our folks everywhere continue to engage in those mitigation strategies so we can at least internally keep our numbers as low as possible.
Kevin, in response, I know I had sent you an email earlier. If you could just go through that. I know Dr. Mackin had originally said 10 was kind of her number. And just looking at this, we're still well below that 10. If you could just talk about that.
So 10, she was, I believe, she was referring to the learning model guidance that the state DPH had published. So I believe she was talking about that, 10 and fewer new cases on average would lead you to more in-person learning. 10 to 25 new cases on average would lead you to more hybrid or remote learning, and then 25 or greater would lead to more remote learning, maybe fully remote learning. I believe that's what she was referring to, and her numbers and all that. I mean, she also, as you may recall, she monitors that COVID Act Now website. So those numbers don't get more granular than county level data. So that's what she tracks.
Right.
She was referring to 3. Back in, August, September at the county level, we were down in the low 3s in terms of the average daily new cases on a rolling 7-day.
Right. But so we went from low 3s to 5.4, just to clarify, of the most recent data that you have.
No, I still think that's apples and oranges, Mandy, because the 5.4 is Wilton specific.
Got it. Versus Fairfield.
So I would say we went from 3 to 9, because that's Fairfield County. Or, and I'd really want to be cautious about what she was referencing in 3, because if 3 on the COVID Act Now website, then I would say the jump is from 3 to 11 something today.
Right.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess, and my other bigger question, I know, a lot of schools around us, also in Fairfield County, are back full time. And I know we had talked about that, but my biggest concern is the curriculum. And I just want to make sure everyone's aware, how far behind is Middlebrook on curriculum? I think that we said last week it was 3 weeks. Is that number still?
Yeah, I would be very cautious in generalizing. And so I think, what you're referring to was Jory's comments about the amount of time that it took for our teachers to get through those introductory units. And so, if they were estimated at 6 weeks, they might have taken 8 weeks. And so I think that's what he was referring to. I would, defer to Chuck, who has a more global view of all of the curriculum implementation, to offer a comment on, where, if, or how far behind we are. So I think, and I would be cautious about, interpreting that. Chuck, are you still on? Do you want to comment on Mandy's question?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we are somewhat behind in the curriculum at Middlebrook, and there are a complex number of factors that are contributing to that. I think it's important to understand, though, that when the children come back full time, we're still having a lot of difficulty getting through the curriculum at the pace that we normally are, because we are still constrained in the ways we can deliver the curriculum, even in person. So there is more difficulty in grouping kids for instruction. There's time taken up with the technology because we still have remote learners. So I don't think that bringing the kids back full time is necessarily going to accelerate the pace of the curriculum implementation.
But Chuck, isn't that assuming that we bring kids back and each class has a remote aspect to it versus having teachers? I feel like when I was at Middlebrook last week, there was discussion about if we were to bring kids back full time, would it be, say I'm a math teacher at Middlebrook. One option is having 5 classes that are live and then 1 class that is remote versus 6 classes that are live and remote.
But keep in mind, when the kids are live, they still have to socially distance. They still have to do their work in Schoology. They still have the setup to do.
But that remote aspect is still up in the air, from what I understand.
Yes. We do need to think about, if we are going to separate the remote learners into a separate class, what do we do when we go back? And that requires shifting kids and having different teachers on an ongoing basis every time we switch the learning model. So you have to weigh the pros and cons of that.
Can I ask the question from a slightly different point of view? Is that, whether we're in person or whether we have to stay in hybrid for longer than we might like. I'm just concerned about the schedule. And it seems that perhaps in this COVID environment, and especially having just looked at the math scores and heard comments about, the concern over the littlest learners in terms of getting their foundational skills, that do we have, and this is just a question, that maybe people could investigate, do we have the best schedule? And by that, I mean, are we allotting our time where it would be most needed and most beneficial? And I know that we typically have, equal periods for, the subjects at Middlebrook, et cetera. And I am not diminishing any other discipline, but I'm just wondering if that is, given that time is so precious, and time on task, whether it's remote or in person, and we all agree that in person is the most desirable, but even just the raw amount of time, there's so much time spent now transitioning, between classes, whether it's the teacher move or the kids move, there's all sorts of health protocols that go on and setups that need to happen. And I just worry about the time on the sort of the core academics. And is there a way of looking at our schedule where we can either teach in longer stretches of time or end up, just not moving around so much during a day or not switching so much during a day at a middle school, or, and again, I would only say this in a COVID environment, but are there some subjects that we ought to be spending just more raw time on than other subjects in order to get to where we want to academically? So it's a question. I know there's no answer for it tonight, but I really think, can we look around and just double check that we're doing the best with our schedule?
So Debbie, I'm really glad you brought that up, particularly in light of the discussion we just had about math. And that is something that we are all talking about all the time. We have begun to make some changes in how kids are moving around the building in order to lessen the amount of transitions. But we do need to take a very hard look at the schedule, particularly at Middlebrook, because we're simply not devoting enough time to certain curriculum areas. It's something that we need to address.
What did we say last week, the average, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but wasn't it 20 minutes was the average amount of time that we're doing learning? So you could say that a child at Middlebrook is getting 100 minutes a week of, let's say, math.
Mm-hmm.
At the most, and then Wednesday's less because it's a shorter day. Right. So less than 90 minutes a week of math.
I would point out that with the change in the teachers staying in the classroom and the kids moving, we've been able to increase the amount of time, but it's nowhere near where we need it to be. Remember, with math, we were trying before the pandemic to increase the amount of time. Now that we're in the midst of the pandemic, we have drastically reduced the amount of instructional time. And personally, I think we're putting our math teachers in a difficult position.
So you think we've gone from 20 minutes to what, 30 minutes? Or what do you think that change of us having, just out of, and I'm not putting you on the spot, I'm just curious, is it 20% more time, 50% more time?
I would defer to Jory on that. I know I was discussing it today at Middlebrook with them, but I don't know the specifics.
Right. Jory, do you want to comment? Because you guys had also implemented another schedule change to add more time back to the classroom.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things. I don't know that I can put a stopwatch on it yet, Andy, in terms of how much we've earned back specifically in terms of that time. It's just been 2 days per cohort at this point. Well, 1 day for the cohort B today. Tomorrow will be 2, the second day. But what we also did is adjusted the schedule towards the end of the day. We had built in some extra time at the end of our day for packing up, organizing, getting ready for dismissal in a staggered manner. And we've taken that time back. It was amounted to about 10 plus or minus minutes that we've now spread throughout the day, not only for transition time, but also more time for the, hopefully to get more time in the classroom. Right now, it's really been more about the transition period that has allowed for kids to be in the class and ready to go quicker than they have been in the past.
So, I mean, obviously we were schedule challenged pre-pandemic at Middlebrook when we were talking about, mathematics instructional time in particular. And so this has certainly added the pressure. So I take the question about looking at some other options. And that's something Chuck, Jory, and I and others will, will engage with the staff around and, just continue to see what we can, that'll help carve some more minutes back.
Yeah, and my question is more driven by the COVID environment. I know that long term, we were talking about math instructional time in general, but now in particular, not only in math, but in some of the other core subjects, are we, just given what's happening, where are we putting our most precious resource, which is time, and maybe again. I won't say it again, but it's just some subjects might need to be highlighted more than others. And I don't know, there's a range of hybrid schedules in schools across the country, and I'm sure no one has the perfect answer, but I just wonder if there are some models out there that might be helpful to us if we are to remain in hybrid longer than we like. And as Jory said, bringing the kids all back isn't necessarily the magic answer this year either. So, I really worry about the math and the reading. So just to put it out there. So thanks for being willing to look at it. Jen.
All right, I'm going to jump in. I spent a lot of time yesterday and today deciding whether or not I wanted to share some of my thoughts instead of only asking questions like we typically do. I ultimately decided that yes, I would like to share some of my thoughts. And I knew that we were at the end of the agenda, so I actually wrote it out. So I'm going to read it so that I'm not wasting more time. But last week, we were really excited to hear that schools are not sources of community spread, and that data showed very little infection rates across the county or across the country for schools that opened early. Today, we're saying there's an uptick in our county, but from what I'm hearing, it's really not within our school district. We've had 2 cases. And I think that we've done pretty well. And at some point, I think we need to trust what we have in place. And there are a million reasons not to do something. I recognize we're in a pandemic and need to consider health and safety. I also recognize disruptions are not ideal, but at some point, the disruptions have to be weighed against significant downsides of remote learning for many households and students, including those that are unspoken and undetected. For those students who can go to school and whose parents want them to go to school, they should be in front of a teacher for as long as we possibly can. We are losing ground academically, and while one can argue that doesn't matter right now, it does matter that our kids are in front of a screen for 6+ hours, and their primary way of learning is through a screen, despite years of research that suggests children learn best through multiple modalities. There's nothing healthy about our kids dreading school in the morning and getting upset about having to log on, struggling with technology more than usual, or feeling ignored because they are at home. I know some are fine or doing fine, and some are not, and I know some say they're fine, but their behavior after remote days suggests otherwise. Our teachers are doing the best they can with the hand they've been dealt. It's impossible to be in 2 places at the same time. I was fortunate to shadow a teacher for a couple hours on Monday. She handled moving classes, school tech issues, kids having trouble sending a picture of their notes, answering questions for both the kids at home and at school. And mind you, the kids at school or at home, she was responding verbally and through a chat room, all while trying to teach the class. And she did it beautifully. But it's a lot of work and a lot of lost instructional time. I feel like a board is in place to represent the community for checks and balances and to challenge our school communities to always seek bigger and better. When I was considering running, I was told, if elected, to always keep in mind that our kids have one shot at K-12 education. Despite everything going on, I believe we can do better. If we truly can't bring these kids back within the next couple of weeks, there needs to be some sort of interim plan. Maybe 6th grade goes back, maybe we alternate having a full weekend with the 3 grades, maybe we alternate cohorts on half-day Wednesdays. Some way, we need to go back to the drawing board and figure out how we can improve academic and social, emotional outcomes. I have a great respect for everyone's input and the competing considerations for these issues, but unfortunately at this time and respectfully, I do not support this decision. We saw it today with all the academics, and unfortunately, Teacher and Learning Committee, we didn't get to go through those specifics because we ran out of time, but we have significant academic challenges. And to Debbie's point, if that means we have to look at the schedule again, but the hybrid I'm not sure that's really the solution. And if we really can't get our kids back in, then we need to think of something else. And that's my soapbox. So thanks.
Well said, Jen.
Okay, thank you. Yep, good points. Any other comments? Kevin, what do you suggest we do from here?
Yeah, so I think, and I appreciate the comments, and
Yeah.
UC, I liked last week's story better than this week's story, in all fairness, and all frankness. But we have the advice of our health professionals that we've been relying on throughout, and I think it would be unwise to deviate from their recommendations. So I think the next steps, so I guess just in terms of action, my recommendation stands that we defer action tonight, which would mean we remain in the hybrid temporarily. As I noted already, we'll continue to get the facility set up. I'll revisit the schedule with Jory, so we'll get working on that as well. And then I'll also get together with both Chrissy and Barry. We'll bring Barb Shum in the mix too. And I think we need to really talk about two things. One is from a transmission rate, and really noting the difference, because that is Jen, I'm aware of it, and you made that point very well. The schools, and that's locally, and that's evidence in the data that's emerging from across the country. Schools aren't the driving factor in spreading the virus, and so we need to account for that in terms of making our decisions. Chrissy and I, when we spoke earlier this week, she also did kind of asterisk that comment and say, but we also have to be mindful of spread in the community. So, how we balance that out, that's really, beyond me and my purview as a superintendent. I'll try to figure it out, but I need reliance on our medical and health professionals to do that. So we'll get some better clarity about, when and what those parameters could be. We're working, at the state level too, because nobody has an answer to this question anywhere. And if you read the guidance from the DPH, they give you very broad guidance and leave it up to local discretion to make some choices. So, for better or for worse, that's where we are. In watching the trend of the numbers as well, I think we also need to be having a conversation about the elementary schools, and is there a point in time where they come from out of full in person to back to that two-day hybrid? Not that we want to do that, but I think we need to be prepared for all possibilities. So I think that's also part of the conversation with Chrissy and Barry. So I will put that on my immediate agenda, and then I'll come back to the board and with some follow-up information and recommendations.
So can we have a date, Kevin? Let's assume everything turns around. Is there a date like that Middlebrook could be ready to have students back based on what they need to do?
If everything got better tomorrow, just going back to some of the legal things, ordered sneeze guards, we're on the hunt for more student desks. But I think that, if everything was beautiful, we could look at that, Monday, November 2nd. I think that highly unlikely, but I think that would be probably the next soonest, at least from a delivery schedule.
Okay, and Kevin, that we stand as a board, ready to meet whenever. So don't be hampered by our meeting schedule. If the numbers get better, or if terrible, Dr. Mackin and Barry Vogel can, look at parameters slightly differently or not, then, please know that we can meet at any point in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Kevin, can you just get clarification from them when you meet with them? So if the schools continue to have no cases, I guess I'm just having a hard time understanding what Jen was saying, and I completely agree with everything Jen so eloquently said. So thanks, Jen. But if the schools continue to have no cases and cases are rising in Fairfield County, at what point do we say this isn't because of the schools, so it doesn't make sense to pull back or not move forward with getting our kids live?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question for the health advisors to figure that one out. I think that's I don't want to say $64,000 question. It's worth much more than that. But yeah. I mean, right now, the way I look at it, we have our district, a town health advisor, and then our district medical advisor, both advising to wait. And we have said health and safety is our first priority. So we need to be guided by that. Having said that, asking them the question about what about the data that seems to support schools don't transmit? What does that mean versus the community outside transmission rate? That's a more complicated medical question that I can certainly answer, but I think that's absolutely the right question to ask. And does that set different parameters for these different models for us?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at the map that Kevin put up earlier of Connecticut. Norwalk is right next to us, and they've got a real problem. They border us. Fairfield has a real problem, and they're not that far away from us. We've been very, very fortunate so far that the things that we have done, the cautious approach that we've taken, has really has worked wonders for us. And no one would love to have the kids back in school more than I would. But I just don't, I think Kevin's approach is the right one. There's no reason, it's 2 weeks or whatever it may be. We just need to be careful. We need to be cautious. We need to, because the downside is not worth the risk. I don't think. Yeah, and if we have to stay remote, if you look at our parent letters, they're pretty evenly split. Some of the half of them want the kids back in school. The other half say, hey, this is working fine. Let's not rock the boat. Let's not upset the apple cart. Let's keep going the way we're going. So there's really no majority opinion out there in terms of what we should do. And
I will say really quickly, 88% of parents, just to clarify, 88% of parents at Middlebrook on this survey said they wanted to send their kids back. Just to clarify.
Okay. All right.
All right, but we also said that health and safety would be the first priority. And so I appreciate all the parent input and all the surveys. And we said we would, take that input, be guided by it. But I think in our goals, we said the prevailing factor would be the health and safety. So again, I keep going back to our medical advisor and our town health director are saying the same thing right now. I think going back and questioning and saying, is there a different way of looking at the data that you could feel comfortable with, et cetera. But those to me are medical questions, or at least epidemiologist, if I said that correctly, questions. And I think it's a good one. And so we don't have an answer tonight. But I also think as a board, we're all very concerned about the amount of instructional time, no matter what model we're using. And so can we reevaluate our schedules and just see if there is some reworking that we could do to provide more time. And you heard my personal preferences around the academics.
So I think that's, how instruction is being delivered. Physical location is one thing, but also is it being delivered in the best possible way to any particular group or age group of students is another question I think that maybe is coming up as well. So I'd like to, if we can kind of explore both paths at the same time, because I think that it's important, even if we're looking what the case numbers are, the health and safety numbers are saying one thing. I also don't want it to be that we're waiting for things to get better until perhaps we can get all the kids in. So if there has to be changes in the way content is delivered or the way, instruction is orientated, we should be pursuing that, I think, with equal rigor as also looking at the model question, as well as looking at the model question. I think that the numbers, from what I'm saying, are probably not going to trend in our favor, at least, through the upcoming holidays. And, given where the medical director and our health director and the advice has been up to this point. Okay, 1 minute. I think that we need to, make sure that we're covering both angles.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions? All right, Kevin, do you need anything more from us? I think we've given you a lot of questions and we stand at the ready and all of that. So
exactly. I think at this point, you know, I will get back to work and I'll come back to the board. Debbie, I'll certainly interface with you probably first, and then we'll plan in terms of, you know, potential next meetings. If we have to add special meetings, then we'll just try to schedule those.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So Debbie, there's no vote and there's no vote tonight, correct?
Right, right. I heard Kevin saying he's recommending going back, but deferring action on it until there's a date. And did I hear that wrong, or Kevin?
Yeah, no vote tonight is my recommendation.
Yeah. But to proceed with the planning and all of that sort of stuff. And then obviously we have tasked him with asking the medical experts the question that Jen posed. And then also looking at different schedules, both during a hybrid model or during a full open model or during a remote model. You know, do we have the best schedule there to accomplish the academic objectives we would like? Okay. All right. There's two more items. Those are approving the calendars. So there's, I guess we do it for 2 years out. So the first one is the 21-22 calendar. And I guess my question had been, it's been vetted by everyone, you know, parents, or I'm sorry, PTAs and principals and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we sent it out. We typically circulate it among the WA leadership. I think we put it in front of
Pictures,
a few weeks ago.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments about the calendar as proposed?
I just had a question to see if anybody else had questions about that 4-day weekend for Columbus Day for the next 2 years. You know, just to see if anybody else or anyone had a concern about the fact that there was a 4-day weekend there. I know at one point it was brought up before.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we took that off the calendar when we were trying to, it was coming off that winter where we had so many snow days. And so we were trying to move things around to protect the end of the school year. And in working with Andrew, he had surveyed the WA membership, and you know, collectively that group really appreciated having that long weekend there. They liked having the Monday holiday as then the professional learning day to follow. That's also a popular weekend for parents and high school seniors to be off visiting colleges. So I just informationally.
Okay.
That's why it's there.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to ask.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the 2021-2022 calendar? Glenn, thanks. Is there a second? Thanks, Gretchen. All right, Gretchen, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, that's approved. And now the next one, the 2022 to 23 calendar. Are there any questions? Comments? All right, is there a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Thanks, Glenn. Second? Is there thanks, Gretchen. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, that also was approved. You see our future regular meeting scheduled, and again, want to emphasize that we stand at the ready to have another meeting as soon as needed. Comments from the public? Lucille?
No, we didn't receive any others.
All right. Well, then thanks everyone for your hard work. This really difficult discussion. I sense that I know that we're all unhappy, you know, to various degrees about various aspects of this situation. But I know that we're all working in good faith, and we're all working together, and we're all trying to come up with the right thing for kids. So I know it's difficult and onerous at times and even ornery, and contentious, but that's the time we live in. And I really appreciate everyone's goodwill tonight. We all share the concern for moving forward on this difficult path, wherever it may lead. So thank you, and this meeting's adjourned.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.